and you can see, I mean, even in 1989, this is what made, you know, Kennedy popular in the polls. And then you can just go through every month here, and you can see that here's a picture of the president and his wonderful family. And this is kind of a remake of a calendar that was made during the time. Here he is in the Oval Office making a phone call. Here's his lovely wife, and he dressed up entertaining guests in Mexico City. This lady doesn't look too happy right here. I'm not sure what her story is. Here he is again signing a bill in his office. Here's a picture at the state dinner in honor of the president of the Ivory Coast. You know, beautifully dressed up. He was, like they mentioned in the video, he was into style. Here's the same picture again. Here's at Hyannisport with the children at the Kennedy compound. He'd have his children there. Robert would bring his children there. It was kind of a big thing in the day. This is a very famous picture the president was taken actually just a week before he was assassinated, right here. Here's a picture. Whoops. Here's a picture of him, you know, meeting the public in the presidential car. That's something he liked to do, not like today. Here he's giving a speech at the University of North Carolina. Here he's at Union Station waiting for the Emperor of Ethiopia.
Is that Haile Selassie?
That would have been, yes. You can really notice him in the, we'll get in to show you that video, but during the funeral he's very noticeable, he and Charles de Gaulle. And this is the White House Christmas party. So this is the kind of stuff that went out, and he was very, very popular at the height of his popularity on that date. And political analysts just believe that, you know, that was his biggest advantage. All right, here's a big one. May 19th, actress Marilyn Monroe sang "Happy Birthday" to President Kennedy on his 45th birthday at Madison Square Garden. And after she got done, he stepped to the podium and said, "Thank you. I can now retire from politics after having had 'Happy Birthday' sung to me in such a sweet and wholesome way." I don't know if you know the story behind that, but
She was
you know,
really poured into that dress.
yeah, oh well, that was something, and she was on amphetamines at the time. But you know, they sewed that on her, and that was a nude colored dress, and it sold, I think, for 1.7 million through Sotheby's. But the thing was, is the president, you know, he just wasn't a very good husband. Jackie was not happy with the fact that Marilyn Monroe was going to go to his 45th birthday party. That whole thing was put together by Peter Lawford, by the way. And anyway, Jackie kind of put the law down. You know, if Marilyn Monroe, it's in a book, Marilyn the First Take. Let me read that to you. You might be interested in that. It's a pretty good story. Just got to find it now. I got it all highlighted because I'm getting older. Let me see if I can find this thing. It's kind of a pretty good story, but I got to find it. Dang it. There we go. I'll just read this to you, okay? Well, this is kind of risky, but I think you can handle it.
Risky.
Yeah. This is explaining the event. He said, this would be the president. He watched the actress move deliberately into the light, cutting short Lawford's sappy monologue. Just as Lawford said, "Mr. President, never in the history of the world has one woman meant so much." A gasp that built into a roar greeted Monroe as she danced through the circles of light. She coyly clasped the wrap around her, masking the dress beneath. She paused until the roar quieted, then shrugged out of the fur, letting it fall backward into Lawford's hands. Whistles and shrieks followed. Up in the presidential box, John Kennedy looked over his shoulder at Ryder Green Shore and said, "Jesus Christ, look at that dress." Shore noticed that the president was staring at every movement. "What an ass," Gene Kennedy said. "What an ass." Seated next to him, Bobby betrayed no trace of emotion. Yeah. Anyway, just behind the president in the director's control booth, Richard Adler, and by the way, Richard Adler is right up there. Richard Adler, let me get to this because this is pretty good. Richard Adler took a long look at the transparent dress. "It was everything I feared," he said. Just before showtime, he had received a last-minute flurry of calls protesting Monroe's appearance. Some came from cabinet members, one from a senior member of the president's White House staff, and some from the highest levels of the Pentagon. As she began the first husky chorus, Monroe seemed energized, perhaps from the amphetamines prescribed by the studio doctors. Robert Slatzer remembered that she was also pumped up with megavitamins and antibiotics. The effect was just hair-raising. It was so beautiful, said Ralph Roberts, who saw the performance from the VIP box. You couldn't hear yourself think for the screaming and yelling. It was like a mass seduction, Adler recalled, and by the way, he was the promoter for Madison Square Garden. With Marilyn whispering happy birthday and the crowd yelling and screaming for her, I realized then that the president was a better showman than I was. Marilyn Monroe later told Life magazine that the approval of the crowd was like an embrace. Then I thought, by God, I'll sing this song. It was the last thing I ever do. And I did it for the people as well. I remember when I returned to the microphone, I looked all the way up into the stands and thought, that's where I'd be, way up there in those rafters. The dress and the occasion would etch themselves into the history of the Kennedy years, along with other film flashes of Camelot, JFK hatless at his inauguration, Jacqueline Kennedy arriving in Paris, John John's salute to his father's coffin. Monroe's performance has been playing ever since. This is a great book if you want to ever read it. Marilyn, The Last Take. It's interesting. But anyway, that is what happened on that particular date in 1962. On May 30th, on a much lighter note, a fellow by the name of Roger Ward won the Indianapolis 500. And he averaged 140.3 miles per hour, and he became Indy's 6th two-time winner. So he actually had won it twice. Pale in comparison, right? I won't go into this completely, but it was on June 12th of 1962 where 3 men were discovered missing from their cells at Alcatraz prison. Anybody seen that movie? They are presumed to have escaped via San Francisco Bay, never were saw again. The new federal penitentiary at Alcatraz had opened in 1934 and was considered the toughest prison America could produce. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin spent 3 months digging through the air vents in their cells with sharpened spoons taken from the prison cafeteria. In addition, they fashioned lifelike dummy heads out of paper, soap, and human hair from the prison barber shop. They also stitched together a makeshift raft and life preservers for more than 50 raincoats, either donated or stolen from their fellow inmates. On the night of June 11th, Morris decided time had come to make their escape. Morris and the 2 Anglins climbed some 30 feet up the prison plumbing system to the roof of the cell house. They then crossed 100 feet of rooftop and made it down 50 feet of piping, hitting the ground near the exit to the inmates' shower area. According to Alan West, a part of the plan, he was a part of the plan who failed to burrow out of his cell in time, but he was going to go with them, but he didn't at the last minute because he couldn't get his hole dug. They were going to make makeshift rafts to reach Angel Island in the bay. After some rest, the men would re-enter the bay on the opposite side of Angel Island and swim to shore on their way to Macon County, California. From there, they were going to steal a car and burglarize a clothing store before going their separate ways. That was the plan. Later, a Norwegian freighter reported seeing a body floating 20 miles northwest of Golden Gate Bridge on July 17, 1962, wearing what appeared to be denim trousers, similar to those issued by prisons. The FBI still maintains active arrest warrants for all 3 men. They are currently listed as the missing and presumed drowned, victims of frigid waters and the swift currents of San Francisco Bay. On March 21st, 1963, less than a year after this escape attempt, however you look at it, Alcatraz prison closed its doors for good. The Rock, as it is now known, is operated by the National Park Service and one of San Francisco's most popular tourist attractions. What is that movie called? Clint Eastwood said, Escape from Alcatraz. If you ever get a chance, it's an older movie, but it's pretty good. And it tells about, there's been all kinds of movies. They had the movie where the guys were trying to get money for their fallen comrades. It was called The Rock. There's been a few movies about Alcatraz. On the 25th, what month are we in again? June. 25th of June, 1962, is when the Supreme Court banned official prayer in public schools, building the wall of separation of church and state, as we know it today, after 1962. July, famous writer William Faulkner died on July 6th at the age of 64. Amazing man, had won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for literature and 1 Nobel Peace Prize during his career. Pretty good run. On July 20th, General Maxwell Taylor, who's up on the board there, becomes the head of the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff, and he's going to play a role next week in the upcoming Cuban Missile Crisis, a big role. On August 5th of 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Los Angeles home of a drug overdose at the age of 36. Also on August 17th, Peter Fechter laid in a pool of blood for over an hour after being shot in the back. You know what happened to that poor kid? Anybody want to guess? How did he get shot in the back? He was attempting to defect over the Berlin Wall. He was machine gunned down by East German police, and West German police could only toss him bandages as he cried out for help before sinking into silence. His friend who had fled with him successfully scaled the Wall of Freedom, only scarred by the barbed wire, so Peter Fechter becomes the first casualty of the Berlin Wall. September 25th, Sonny Liston defeated Floyd Patterson just 2 minutes into the first round to win the heavyweight boxing championship of the world. Liston's victory will set the stage for his upcoming heavyweight championship fight, in which he loses to Olympic gold medal winner Cassius Clay. October, and we stop at this because October 16th to the 28th, what happened? The Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's what we'll cover next week. We can get through that pretty good. If you get a chance, and we've talked about this Race for Space, if you have not seen the movie Hidden Figures, you have got to see it. It is an incredible movie. It's about African American women who came about and made it possible for those Mercury astronauts to get in space, especially John Glenn. Very accurate. I took the kids to it last year at the movie theater. Here they gave us kind of a midday performance. If you have not seen Hidden Figures, you have got to rent that. It would be well worth your while to see. It's an incredibly good movie about NASA, civil rights, and the role of women, especially black women, in the United States in a pretty tough time. If you get a chance to watch that, watch it.
Incredibly smart women.
Yes, and unbelievable who got, I mean, I can give you parts of the movie, I don't want to give it away, but I mean, this lady, when she had to go to the bathroom, she had to run clear across the base because all the bathrooms were segregated. And this gal was figuring out how to get people into space. It's a great movie. You've got to see it if you get a chance.
But she didn't take the credit. I mean, it always went to one of the other guys.
That's right.
One of the white.
Yeah. And they don't, John Glenn said later, he doesn't get into space without the help of these ladies, especially this one particular one. I don't want to give too much of it away for you, but okay, I hope you're enjoying this. We will continue on, and we will talk next week about the Cuban Missile Crisis and tell you kind of what happened in each day of the crisis and the main players. And then I'm going to suggest a movie to you that we just wouldn't have time to watch in here because it's fairly lengthy. But if you get a chance to watch the movie 13 Days with Kevin Costner after we talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, or if you wanted to watch it before next week, you'd probably be ahead of the game. But I mean, it's an incredibly good movie that's very accurate in comparison to some of these that have been on about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we'll base our discussion that kind of ties into that movie. I don't ever give historical facts on movies, but the story I'll tell you will match up very well with the movie 13 Days. So a very important time. Okay, well thanks a bunch. We'll see you next week. Oh, one thing that Mrs. Wiley said is there's a middle school concert next week at 7. Does that affect anybody? I know it's going to affect.
In the high school one?
Is it
choir.
Oh, I don't know. Do you want to, is it at 7?
Yeah.
Do you want to start later, start earlier, just go what we're doing, not meet? What do you, I mean, I don't know how many that's going to affect. Would it make a difference if, we'll just go at 7 and you can come in after it's over?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll plan on that. All right, we'll get the Brookwells here. They're missing out on great history. You hear that?
Oh, you showed up. I didn't know you were here.
I got here about 7:03 or something.
Long day.
He had success in his suicide mission, or was it?
No, it actually blew up prematurely. Yeah, so it was a failed mission, but cost him his life. Yeah, yeah. No, the explosive. He was supposed to jump out, and then the explosive was supposed to go down, and blow up. Well, it blew up in midair.
Before he got to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just
So
wondered.
it's a failed mission, so to
Who
speak.
is Madeline Murray?
Madeline Murray.
Famous agnostic